we had to ask you while you're here, while we have you, what it's like to call multiple games in a weekend. Like, what is that preparation like? And if anybody's trying to get into broadcasting, what should they know about that sort of preparation and what it takes?
That's the thing about, broadcasting and advice and all that. It's like I was a USC football player and I was a little different. I was like an English major. So I was kind of weird. And back then the newspaper was more prevalent. So the writers kind of liked me and they wrote about me. I was, not a mediocre player, but I was, a little above serviceable and mediocre, I guess, maybe. And I scored touchdowns as a short yardage guy and I had some speed. So I didn't have any ambition to do it, but I was just kind of roped into the work when I was 23, 24. And, it was hard. I learned I'm very irreverent in a lot of ways. And I took my lumps, but, I was in my mid-20s and I was doing national college football games and calling games on TV. So, I've been doing it I'm 45, but I've been doing it 23 years for Fox, So I've had a lot of time to learn how to prep a game, you know what I mean? And I think the most important thing for games on television are to really work with production, as opposed to sitting here and memorizing numbers about the passing offense or, different stuff that you see during a football game on the screen, stats and such, is really get the idea of, because I'm an analyst, right? So the idea of what I think the game's going to be like or who we should watch, or just discussion, like we're having about the game, and laugh about the game, talk about the game, live the game all week, and then by the time the game starts, no matter who it is, like the Sicko Bowl, the one we did on Friday, no matter who it is, it's fun because it's your game. No one else got that game, and it's your story to tell. And it might be a boring story, but you can only do your best with what you have. So I train people for Fox a lot of the time. I used to for years when I was on the road. I had some successes, like Joel Klatt, was a new broadcaster. We did a 3-man booth. We didn't really have a training thing, but I did train, like Mark Helfrich and some other guys that haven't worked out, NFL Hall of Famers mostly. But I remember when we were doing Helfrich, the very first game we had was Tom Herman's first game at Texas, when then Maryland went down and beat their ass with DJ Durkin and the presidential backfield. And, it was a great game. Place is full, great energy. I mean, it's Austin for, in the first game, new coach, Bevo, the whole deal. And Helfrich is a good analyst, and it came out, that he's a good play caller and he can explain it during the game. And everybody at Fox was excited, and it was an exciting game. And we were happy. We went and had a beer and tacos and all smiles. The next week we had Oklahoma State at Oregon State. And, Minnesota at Oregon State. PJ Fleck chest bumped his wife on the 50 after the victory, like sprinted and chest bumped her. And, but that was not an exciting game. It was a herky-jerky game with reviews and a lot of penalties. And, it just wasn't that competitive. And after the game, he looked at me and was like, what can I do better? How to, what happened? And I said, nothing happened. It wasn't a good game. You're just a product. You're just part of this production, and that's my advice, to everybody is, especially on television, radio is different. You got to keep the bike pedaling and you got to keep pedaling or it just falls over. But in TV, the cool thing about a game on TV is the game on TV. It's the fact that we have great cameras and we're looking at this, right? You watch the game in the bar on mute. The guy that tells you what's happening is the director, the guy that's cutting cameras, and we concentrate so much in our business on the guys that are talking. And, this is my moment to deliver the message. And, to a certain degree, that's true. But the best broadcasters are the ones that work the most closely with the producer and the director all week and all game, we get away from that because it's hard to get these jobs, So once you get the job, you feel like, oh shit, I better do it, and it's true, but most everybody, to be honest, talks way too much, during the games. And, and they don't talk to the pictures, and that's just what I try to do. So with that in mind, and then, there is no substitute for having done West Coast games for 20 years. I know all these guys, ex-coaches, guys they played with, like, it's a football web. So, that kind of holds you up. And then you do, okay, who's starting, who's playing, who's hurt, how's they're targeting this guy a bunch, that kind of stuff. But I guess that's a long roundabout answer, but it's a long week of preparation. But once you do it, it's easy to do 2. 3 is a lot just because of the meetings, with the coaches, and you can get confused. But 2 is easy, and 1 is almost like not working if I don't have to travel.
You and Alex and your entire crew just do a tremendous job. And thank goodness that you guys focus so much on the fans and the wackiness that's happening in the stands too.
Well, that's a director, I mean, they find that, we have our people there that are working. And, if it's a bad game, you got to have some fun at the end. And, that's kind of how we do it. Like, I do a radio show I'm sure you guys aren't familiar with, but I sound like a complete freak on the radio. Like, I go nuts, and it's very different from when I call a game. When you call a game, it's about the kids that are playing. You try to get their names right, all that stuff. And it's a football forward thing. But when we have time and it's kind of boring at the end and we've got to get the breaks in and finish, I try to honor the kids that are playing at that time. But at the same time, we have a little bit more fun. So, yeah.
And I just want to say I really appreciate that that answer, just because, as a kid, I grew up listening to guys like Brent Musburger, who are legendary in calling college football. And, hearing those kind of answers about all the prep and stuff like that, I think is really useful to, all the kids out there that want to get into a business that's already so saturated with all this talent. So, the best ones are going to be the ones that put in the most work to, propel themselves up the ladder. So, thank you so much for that.
Well, the interesting thing to me is, when I started doing games, not all the games were on TV. You'd have to, like, let's say you're Mississippi State or Cal, 2 or 3 of your games every year, maybe more, probably less, would just be on the radio, and so it's cool that there's a bunch of games on TV. But like you said, it saturates the market with a lot of broadcast and production that's not properly doing the job. And I think that's why, to a certain degree, FS1 and Fox would rather have, me do 2 night games than have somebody maybe who's a little, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a toss up, get more people involved. But there's a lot of games on now, and they're trying to cover all of them. And when think about it like this, it's not just Fox College Football. A lot of people and my colleagues work NFL as well. They're going to half of them are going to freaking Qatar, when the World Cup starts. I'm going to lose my producer for the last 2 weeks. Major League Baseball playoffs have started. My director goes, so, everybody's stretched pretty far down the rope there. And they're trying to get everything they possibly can on TV, because live sports on TV is what's keeping television alive, you know. Otherwise, everybody else is just going to watch everything else on their own time and their own dime. So it's an interesting time. And you know, it's great that there's more opportunity, but also some of these broadcasts I watch because I have to prep the next game. And I'm like, you know, the analysts should not talk during the freaking call. Like, well, the guy's going like, and he's going down to and then you hear this analyst go, woo, woo, oh, there he is. Oh, he's open. Oh, shit. And it's like, what are you doing? What are we doing? Like somebody, and like the producer's got to say, we can't do that, you know, and then it pisses the play-by-play guy off. And he goes home and calls all his friends from Syracuse and complains about the analyst. And I mean, it's just a circle of hatred, you know, it's just like, shut up when the guys talk, you know, let him have the call. Let him have the call. You know, that's what I told Joel when he started working with Gus. And Joel never had that problem anyway. But I just said, let him have his big call. And then he'll love you. You know, whatever else happens after that, you know, everything will be great. And, you know, you got to let that happen. Let everybody do their job.